unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
What is up, everybody? This is Hater Radio. My name is Chris McLean. I'm without a co-host tonight. It's just me. But Ian will be back next week. We're not going to have a show this Wednesday, obviously Christmas. So Merry Christmas, y'all. But let's jump into it. So we'll talk about the playoff games, but let me jump into the Florida Bowl game first, and then we'll move on from there. A very, very typical Billy Napier win for the Gators. They were moving the ball pretty decently in between the 20s and then just couldn't capitalize on their drives. Settled for a couple of field goals. DJ threw interception in the end zone. He threw another interception as well, and it looked very lackluster, because of the mistakes. But if the mistakes don't happen and those field goals turn into touchdowns, that game, the final score was 33-11, I believe, and or something like that. Let me see real quick. I don't really care too much about bowl games. I know, it's. At this point, there's a 12-team playoff. I only really care about the 12 teams that get in. And if going forward, 33-8, sorry, not 33-11, 33-8. But no, this game doesn't matter that much. Yes, they did win 8 games. I did predict an 8-4 record, so pretty close to that. But it didn't matter. It just was build the momentum here, get to the offseason and go forward. And they win. They were able to avoid any major injuries in the game. A lot of guys sat. Banks and Cam Jackson didn't play. A lot of the younger guys got to play, got in action. The defense was very stout. I think they held Tulane to 194 total yards. And a lot of that really came kind of late because most of it throughout the normal time of the game, there was almost nothing going for Tulane. Their quarterback, Ty Thompson, was just he's not very good. I'm just going to put it out there. He had 3 interceptions, just a rough game, 125 yards. And even though DJ had those 2 interceptions, he still had 305 yards. So, he had a really strong game. And he also took home the MVP award for the Gasparilla Bowl. So Florida gets the win, 33-8. They move on to the offseason. They have a potential flip of getting or transfer. I don't even know what you characterize it as, because Dallas Wilson signed with Oregon 2 weeks ago and now is released from his signing with them and now has the ability to go elsewhere. He was at the Gasparilla Bowl, and then he was at the Florida basketball game yesterday and had an official visit. So it looks like he might sign with Florida. Who knows? And then there's also potential with Jonte Cook from Texas. So there's a couple portal transfer players that they might get there, which it's weird to characterize Dallas Wilson as that, but technically that's what it is, even though he never officially is with Oregon in a practice setting at all. But no. So that's it. That's the season for Florida. It was a great year. We all thought that Billy was going to be fired to start the year, and then it turns out he didn't, and he survived. The Gators made the most of the year. They won. They went on a 4-game win streak that really turned the season around. They were 4-5 after that Texas game. And, I think because of DJ Lagway, it gave a lot of fans and players belief that they could win. And he did. He backed it up. He basically won every game that he started and played all the way through. The only game that he lost technically was the Georgia game, but he didn't play all the way through. So, the sky's the limit with this team. People want to come play for DJ, and it's evident, and if it's from J. Michael Sturdivant coming in, another transfer there, or to the top signing class, it's now with Dallas, it would be like technically within the top 10. So, considering where they were as of the Georgia game, where they were, the class was nowhere. It was like in the 50s and looked like everything was all lost and Billy might be fired. And then things started to turn around. And, credit to one, definitely the defense, two, DJ. And, those two really were the difference there, because the defense just constantly causing pressure on all the quarterbacks that they played. They were very stout against the run, taking that away from people, and just making turnovers as well, because that's something that hasn't happened in the last couple of years. And I think they had 25 finished the year with. So 25 is quite a big difference from, I think last year was something like 10 or something. I don't know, something ridiculous. But regardless, great year considering that it was heading towards a disaster finish. Could have been, coming into the year, everyone looked at those last 5 games where it was Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, Florida State, and everyone's like, oh man, there's no way they're going to win these games. And they ended up going 3-2 in those games. So that's, amazing. Yes, Florida State completely fell off, but, Ole Miss was still a top 10 team when Florida beat them, and LSU was a top 25 team at the time that they beat them. So still a 3-2 mark out of those 5 games is remarkable. And if DJ Lagway was healthy in that Georgia game, there is a chance that they could have won that game, and they probably should have, because they were even, the game was like a 4 or 5 minutes left, and it was a tie game. So it's not like Florida wasn't in that game, even without DJ. But regardless, great season, great finish. Now let's talk about the college football playoff games. So this is officially like a college football show from here on out. I'll smattering talk of USF and USC, but the rest of it's just going to be college football the rest of the season. So our college football playoff. So, it was, I know a lot of people are upset. You look at those scores and it's like, oh, terrible games, terrible outcomes, blowouts, whatever. And I am always a glass half full guy. And I look at it as, one, we got home playoff games and the environments were crazy. It was ridiculously cold in 3 of the 4 games, to the point where in the Tennessee game, Nico Iamaleava, cracked his helmet, one of the first rushes he had. And so it was that cold that you cracked your helmet. And you know what? I'm telling you what, it was spectacular. That Notre Dame intro where they're playing Dropkick Murphys, and it's, pumping through the stadium, and the crowd was pumped, and even Ohio State's with their fireworks show, and it was cool, man. I'm telling you what, we haven't seen anything like this ever in the 150 year plus years of college football. This was something that we should treasure. And I know the games didn't play out that great. That sucks. Trust me, I wanted closer games. I wanted at least 2 close games, but we didn't get it. I think that, if we had like a 16 team playoff, we might have seen those other teams where Alabama, South Carolina, and Ole Miss, and maybe we could have had some different outcomes with some of those matchups. And I think people would have been a little bit happier, because, all 3 of those teams have great quarterbacks. Sellers is not on the level of start in Milroe yet, but he's right there. Crazy athletic and just makes plays. No, those three teams would have made it more interesting against some of those other teams. I know we're probably heading towards that, and I kind of want that. And also, if we can do first and second round games at home playoff games, that honestly would be ideal. And I think we're leaning towards that because I've heard quite a few different media members mention that specifically. So if that is a potential, I think that'll end up being the reality, which we really do need more of that, because that is the number one selling part of this weekend, was the fact that these home playoff games were way more interesting than a neutral site game that is neutered and like corporate and NFL and like no one really cares. These home playoff games, they're exciting. The fans are into it. It's loud. I mean, even in the Tennessee-Ohio State game, Tennessee fans were like 30,000 deep there. And, there was a ton of them there, and they were loud, and they were definitely, presenting a problem to, like they, at their player walk into the stadium, there was like at least like a couple thousand outside there of Tennessee fans that were causing trouble. So it was definitely a different environment than what you have at a neutral site game. But no, let's get into it. Okay, so the first game we had was on Friday, Notre Dame, Indiana. I can't remember my prediction specifically, but I'm pretty sure I had Indiana winning the game, which I was wrong, and I'm pretty sure Ian picked Notre Dame. But, Notre Dame defensively played really strong. I think they kept Indiana in check in between the 20s. Again, that's another theme for the last couple of games, and it's going to be throughout all these games, because that was the reason why a bunch of these teams that lost did lose, was because they were unable to capitalize on the ability to get close and then score when they got close, because quite a few, SMU was that as well. They would get close and they just couldn't score, and it really kind of shot themselves in the foot. SMU, especially with turnovers. Indiana didn't have a ton of turnovers in this game, but they definitely had their chances, and they just couldn't capitalize. It was that Notre Dame had an interception that Indiana was driving. Indiana gets down there, and then Indiana throws an interception. And then, Notre Dame has the ball on like the 2-yard line. And then the running back, Jeremiah Love, just runs it for a 98-yard touchdown. And, that honestly, if Indiana holds them there, this game might be a lot different, because at that point, Notre Dame does score a later touchdown, but it was really kind of close for the most part. Indiana was right there. If they could have buckled down, I know it's, one play and you can't take that out, but besides that one big play, they would have kept them to about 300 yards of offense, depending on what they would have done on that drive regardless. But, it would have been pretty close. And I think that was almost the difference of the game, because it was like Indiana had a chance to go up, up a touchdown or 3 points. And then Notre Dame comes in there and then scores that touchdown. And it was such a huge difference in the game. Another thing that I noticed in that game was it was, I believe, 14-0 or 14-3. I can't remember specifically. Let me see. So it was 14-3, and Notre Dame was driving. It looked like Indiana had stopped them. They were forcing Riley Leonard to go out of bounds, and was potentially going to force either a long field goal or maybe even a punt, because it was like a 3rd and 17 or whatever. And as Leonard is going out, and I hate this. This is one of my biggest pet peeves about college football, because college football calls it more so than the NFL. Well, maybe besides Mahomes, but Leonard is going out of bounds, and he's literally not even out of bounds yet. And the guy pushes him, and he goes violently into the sideline, but that is regardless. I'm tired of this because, there are quarterbacks that'll fake that stuff. And so they act like they're going to go out and they keep going because the defenders lay up. And, you'll see even other defenders where they won't even hit as hard because they're afraid of getting a late hit or a whatever near the end of the sidelines. And so they ease up on those. And it's like, I'm sorry, but this is football. And if they're trying to get them down, which is the whole point of defense, and you're preventing them from doing that actual thing, it's kind of like giving them a huge advantage, which is totally unnecessary. And I don't know. I just feel like I've seen it way too many times. I mean, the Gators seem to like fall in that trap so many times of like, going after a player and hitting him just on the hair of being late. And I wish, honestly, the key to like change how this is going down, I wish they would just make it reviewable so that the refs can look at it and be like, they can watch it in real time on the replay and then watch it as it's slow. And if it's like right there, boom, then don't go throw a flag. Because if he's like right near the sideline and if he's not technically out yet, then why are we throwing a flag? Like their goal is to tackle them. And if they're tackling them as they're going out of bounds, like right at the line, I'm sorry, but that is a clean hit because you're basically, extending the field of play. It just happens to be that it's there. I don't know. I'm over it. I'm tired of it. And it's enough because that led to a field goal for Notre Dame, making it 17-3. And then at the end of the game, later on, as Indiana scored 2 touchdowns, if they had, because they got it to 27-11, if they had, if it was 24-10 at that point, they would only need a touchdown and then another touchdown to tie. So they did get a touchdown, and then it would have been a 1-score game with like, I don't know how much time was left. It was very little time, but it was kind of ridiculous. I know it doesn't really matter in the long run, but it does, technically, if you see this game as it plays out as well, because then there's more game pressure on Notre Dame. If they don't hit the field goal, it's only a 2-score game, and then, if some, I don't know, it's very a minuscule thing, but it does end up having a huge effect on what happened in the long run. But Notre Dame, though, I will say their defense does look stout. They shut down Indiana's run game for the most part. 63 total yards for Indiana on the ground. Rourke looked all right. He didn't look great, but he looked good enough to potentially win the game for them. But that one interception was deadly and was probably the difference in the game, like I said. And, Notre Dame moves on. We'll talk about the games, the quarterfinals, not Wednesday, because like I said, there's no show, but the following Sunday, so a week from today. But so Notre Dame moves on. They'll play Georgia. Let's move on to the next game, which was SMU Penn State. I had high hopes for this because I thought SMU was going to play this game really well. I thought Jennings was going to have a good game. And man, was I wrong. I mean, he imploded. I'm talking like one of the worst playoff performances I think I've ever seen outside of maybe TCU and the Georgia game. But I don't even remember. I don't think TCU's quarterback was that bad. It just was Georgia, completely dominated. But, in this game, Penn State didn't even do anything offensively. Drew Allar had 127 yards. Like they literally were like non-existent on offense, 325 total yards. They did run the ball really well, Penn State, but, SMU just made huge fatal mistakes. Again, in between the 20s, they were moving the ball quite well. They'd get inside the red zone and they just would fall apart. They had 2 pick sixes that Jennings threw, another interception on top of that. So we had 3 total interceptions. Just a terrible day. And, Drew Lar, like I said, didn't even have to do anything. And like, I'm not the biggest fan of him anyways, but like they didn't have to do much. They were up 28-0 at halftime. And then, SMU got some scores late, but it was really nothing because at that point they were already down 31-3. And just it was a beatdown. And I think that if Jennings doesn't make those terrible mistakes, because they were gifts. They weren't even like Penn State was even doing anything to force these turnovers. Like Jennings was just on the run on two of them, and he threw it like right to Penn State players. So I don't know. It's tough to see that because they played really well all year. It feels like they didn't give it their best shot. They did struggle in that first half against Clemson, so it kind of came back again. They struggled and they just couldn't recover. Maybe they thought that they could come back and recover from that, but it didn't happen here. Nick Singleton for Penn State had a good game, 90 yards. Katron Allen, 70 yards, 2 TDs. Just, honestly, Penn State didn't have to do much, and they won this game easily. This will not be the same case when they go up against better teams, which, I know Boise's not going to be as tough as some of these other good teams, but I feel like with Ashton Jeanty, Boise can put up a scare to them. Penn State, I'm not the biggest fan of. I do like their tight end, Tyler Warren. The kid's a stud and can do all kinds of things on the field, blocking, throwing. Like he does pretty much everything, and he's a freak, and he's good at it all. But he wasn't even he didn't even have that big of a game. 33 yards in through the air and a 6-yard run. But that was it. Like I said, they didn't even have to do anything because they don't really have like the receivers aren't like that talented, outside of Warren, but he's a tight end. And then really it's their running backs, Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, and that's it. So they have to run the ball. I think they can run the ball against Boise State, but again, Ashton Jeanty is going to be all over it. So I think he's going to have a big game. I like Penn State's defense, but I like Boise to be able to run the ball. We'll talk about that more next week. Okay, next game, Texas Clemson. I almost went to this game. I was like this close. I was like, on the verge of renting a car to drive like 19 hours from Long Beach to Austin. And I was very close to doing it. And the tickets weren't even that bad as far as to the game. The flights to Austin were like crazy expensive. It was like 600, 700 bucks. And I was like, yeah, I'm not spending that much. And then if I had done the the rental car, it would have been roughly around like with everything would have been around like 500 bucks. But I'm glad I didn't. I'll wait next year. And I want to wait for a better matchup because I knew this game wasn't a total blowout, but I knew that Texas was going to win pretty comfortably, and they did. This never really was a scare. The Bucks game is on right now, if anyone's watching out there. But no, this game, Clemson goes up early 7-0, and it looks like, all right, this might be a game. And then Texas just, puts it to them. Quinn Ewers had a couple of deep balls. The run game for Texas was just dynamite. Jaden Blue and Quintravion Wisner, just huge games from both of them. Both of them had 2 TDs each. Jaden Blue had 146 yards on the ground. Wisner had 110. Just dominant games. Ewers did have 1 pick, and it could have been a pick 6. It probably should have been, but they called a penalty on a blindside block that kind of changed the outcome of the game because at that point, I believe it was 28-10. And then that pick 6, I can't remember for sure, but like either way, Clemson came back though. They scored a late touchdown to make it a 7-point game, and it was 24-31. And then right there, boom, Jaden Blue. No, was it Wisner? It was Wisner. Wisner with the huge touchdown at the end. And, wait, no, Blue. It was Blue. No, Blue hit a 77-yard touchdown to finish it off. And just, this Texas team, great defense. Quinn Ewers is solid. I don't know why people give him crap. I think he is very, very good at what he does. He's not hugely athletic. He's also dealing with a lot of injuries lately. And so he's been hampered by stuff and limited. But he's very solid in the pass game. He's effective. And I think right now, their best bet to win this year is with Quinn Ewers. And I think it's playing out that way. And they were the better team. Their defense looked great. They only gave up 76 rush yards. Phil Maffa was hurt most of the game, so that kind of helped Texas a lot. But Cade Klubnik, give it to Cade Klubnik. He had a great game, 336 yards. He kept them in it. He had a lot of really good passes. TJ Moore had that touchdown late. And, it was a good game by Clemson, considering, they were overmatched. They were not a top tier team this year like they have been in years past. And, they barely got into the playoff. They squeaked in, winning the ACC championship game, and they deserved to be there. They definitely did, but they were not up there with the top tier teams. And, Texas showed that to them, and they were able to shut it down and move on to the next game against Arizona State, which honestly should be pretty interesting. I'm curious to see how that game goes because I like Scadaboo a lot, and Levitt for Arizona State is playing really well. So I can see this game being interesting. I think they're on the level of like Clemson, though, Arizona State. And I feel like Texas is going to be able to run the ball on them pretty well. Like where Arizona State beat Iowa State in that Big 12 championship game, I feel like Texas is going to be able to run the ball. And, Arizona State got lucky because Iowa State pretty much shot themselves in the foot. I don't think that's going to happen here because Texas performs pretty well. So outside of that Georgia, those two Georgia games. But let's move on to the last one, Ohio State, Tennessee. Now, this game I thought was going to be close. I thought it was going to be the best game out of the four games. And it was 21-10 at halftime, and it looked like it could be. But, Nico just terrible game. 14 of 31, 104 yards. And then conversely, Will Howard, 311 yards, 24 of 29, 2 TDs and an interception. And then also Jeremiah Smith, huge game, 103 yards, 2 TDs. Just, the bright lights come out and Smith just shows off. Kid is just unreal. Freshman, I think he broke the record for receiving touchdowns for a freshman in the Big Ten. Travion Henderson had a really good game. Quinshon Judkins had a good game. I mean, Ohio State is just a very talented team top to bottom. I'm really amazed that they lost to Michigan. I don't know how that happened. I watched that game. I watched the recap, and I'm still amazed that, Michigan won that game. It was just a lot of mistakes by Howard in that game. And here, this game, it was not. Howard did throw that one in the end zone, which was, probably could have held on to that one because Smith was really covered and there was safety help as well. He probably should have held on to that one, maybe just either thrown it away or threw a check down. But no, Ohio State, really talented. I think that's the disparity here with Tennessee. Tennessee does not have that talent there yet. They had a lot of injuries in the game. Samson, their running back, didn't play much at all. He was hurt probably almost the entire game. and he only had 2 carries, and he's all world. He's a great running back. And I thought that Tennessee was going to be able to run the ball like decently, but they didn't really run the ball. Well, they ran it all right, but not to like their level, because they usually run it for like, I think it's like 200 plus, and they only ran it for 152. But again, they passed the ball for only 104, so it was like that was all they could do. So they were limited there. Nico had a lot of runs that were off of broken plays, and he had 20 carries. He ended up with 2 TDs, but a lot of that was no one open downfield, and so he would just have to take off. And this Ohio State team, I'm telling you what, man, they play Oregon. It's a rematch of that game earlier in the year, which was a very great close game. This Ohio State team, if they go on a run, they could be the favorite here for the rest of the way in the playoff. It's amazing that this game, Ohio State Oregon, should probably be the championship game or even a semifinal, but we're getting it as a quarterfinal. I know, this is the way it is because with the seeding, because I wish they could do like re-bracketing or reseeding after the first round. I don't know why other playoffs don't do it. I don't understand it. Some of them balk at it, but I think it's the way to go. I know basketball tournament doesn't do that, so I guess it's par for the course for football as well. But no, I really like this Ohio State team. I think there's a ton of talent. I think because of that loss to Michigan, it might end up being the best thing that could have happened to them. They've really like refocused. They looked amazing in this game. I feel like they have a really good shot against Oregon, and then they would play the winner of Texas, Arizona State, and then after that it would be the championship game. So there's a lot to play for this Ohio State team. I know they won a championship. I know they're tired of coming up short, but this team is really good, and we'll see what happens going forward. Tennessee, tough for them. They had the 30,000 fans there. They just couldn't pull it together. Again, like I said, there's a talent disparity there. It's just a difference between these two teams. And I think Ohio State just out-talented them. And it really was because, as far as Ohio State offensively, you had Quinshon Judkins with 2 TDs, Travion Anderson with 2 TDs, Will Howard with 2 TDs passing. I mean, just a great game overall. They had like 3 sacks, 3.5, 4 sacks. So, this team is very good. And I think it's because that Michigan loss has kind of tainted our view on this team. So we see it like, oh, Ohio State, they lost to Michigan. Who cares? But now it's like we're looking at it. It's like, no, there's actually a lot of talent. And we've talked about it. I mean, most analysts have talked about it all year. The fact that this was one of the most talented teams coming into this year, and they've backed it up. And I feel like if anyone is as dangerous in this tournament as can be, this is the most dangerous team. So, okay, that is it. I know it was disappointing. I know we wanted more out of these games. I've saw some things where it was like average score differential in the 2023 NFL playoffs was like 17 point something. And then the NCAA college football first round playoff differential was like 19 something. So obviously there's a lot of blowout games and playoff games. That just is what it is. I mean, even in the NBA, there's a lot of blowouts as well. I see why people get angry with it, but then it's like you'll have upsets, and there will be eventually. We never thought there was going to be a 16 seed ever beat a number 1. It was like, just write it off. It's never going to happen. And we had it finally happen, 6 years ago. And so like, it is a possibility. We just have to let things play out. And plus we've got home playoff games, which are something that we've never had before. And is something is so amazing. And I'm glad it happened. And I hope that we get more. I hope we get first and second round going forward with that. And hopefully that is the reality. That is the show. Reach us at haterradio.com for all of our articles. There's one on the Gators that I have on there about the momentum and proof of concept, and I'll update it a little bit to include what happened on this game on Friday. All the socials, you can follow us: Instagram, Threads, X, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. Just type in Hater Radio, comes right up. Ian has his socials, but I don't have it because he's not here. So whatever, I'm just not going to say it. I think it's G Gator G. That's how you can find him. But that's the show. Merry Christmas, everyone. We'll talk to you on Sunday next week, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Enjoy this Bucks games, Bucks fans. I know I will. I got the Bucks hat on. So Merry Christmas, y'all, and I'll talk to you soon.